I was thinking. You know, I was the sort of kid who was really obsessed with space. I mean, it was that or serial killers after Uncle Bill took away my Barbie dolls, but I was always kind of practical about it. At the age of 12, I thought that maybe when I was 50, I'd be able to travel to a colony on the moon or orbiting the Earth, presumably to visit my much more successful brother or sister, as I would no doubt have a very terrestrial job of setting up people's cable TV or doing low-key administration work. I wasn't very ambitious. Of course, that, like everything ever said by people who claim to have met an angel, been abducted by aliens, gone back in time, or had a streamlined experience renewing their passport in a foreign country, is wishful bullshit. How close we are to colonising the moon is about as close as Henry VIII was to winning Slimmest Woman of the Year, or about as close as we were 50 years ago, and the truth is, like a pimply pickup artist whose opening gag is about Mr. Spock being half folk and half human, it ain't gonna happen, at least not for a long time. Damn, that Star Trek knowledge has made me feel quite sad because it directly refers to the UK Office Quiz Night episode, which makes me think of quiz nights, which makes me want to cut out my own stomach with a rusty spoon. Also, I don't watch Star Trek. I don't shut up. Little fact for you there, I don't like quiz night or watch Star Trek. Hold the phone, I'm like the anti-geek again, shut up I am. But there would have been a time when I'd have been able to answer many questions about space. I mean, not so many as Stephen Hawking, but then I'm better at pinball than he is, so swings and roundabouts. Why are we never going to set up a colony on the moon? Because it's totally pointless. It's about as useful as hollowing out a mountain and pretending it's a volcano. It's something only a mental person who has aspirations of being evil but would have done better to rent out some cheap office space in Utica and scam people into buying mostly gold bars for when the government collapses would do. But even though I was a miserable bastard from an early age, constantly telling people that even in 10,000 years the best we could hope to achieve was to get to the Dog Star and float around it, in the equivalent of boating from Abu Dhabi to New York to circle around the Statue of Liberty for 10 minutes fueling the motor with $100 bills, I did once wish to be able to get into space. But that was when I was 12. Now when I watch the super happy blokes on the space station hoovering up their stubble as they shave and conducting the sorts of experiments Tier 1 of hell have to do in recess, you know, what effect does weightlessness have on grey blocks? What effect does weightlessness have on ostensibly heterosexual men isolated in confined conditions? What effect does weightlessness have on Nerf guns? Other brands are available. I don't really envy them at all. For the Mars One Con, thousands of people applied to live on Mars, but if you set out an application process to be part of an expedition to spend 2 years in a small submarine before setting up a smaller bubble to live on the sea floor, I bet less people would apply, even though it's both safer and more likely to happen, although admittedly has a poorer view. Still, maybe if you called the people going down there waternauts or something like that and denied that loneliness existed, it might work. I used to know a group captain who claimed to have been retired from flying after pulling 18 Gs in a Eurofighter, the result of which unfortunately did not make him any more interesting because he was the dullest man in the world. Having spent several years as an Air Force test pilot, he then went on to have, nothing to do with the intelligence services. But he was the sort of guy who would show no emotion should 15 people around him all spontaneously combust, or would stand still in the desert for a week if the order came through, or would spend 3 years doing the sums for why the world is actually flat if that was his assignment. He wasn't stupid, very clever in fact, but he was the sort of person who can work out standard deviation in his head and the effect of the moon's gravitational pull on Oprah's mouth. The sort of person who has a dog called Benson, 2 daughters called Olivia and Emily, and never thinks about all the people he may or may not have killed. He was very, very boring, and it's people like him who become astronauts. And while I do quite like grey squares for their dry wit, on the spectrum remarks about gender, race or haircuts, and ability to get things done regardless of the lives they have to take, forget that last comment, they're not the sort of person I either want to be or want to be trapped in space with. I mean, yeah, I'd rather be trapped with British astronaut Tim Bland than British knobhead Russell Brand, but not really. I mean, maybe both together would be okay, and then I could be the one who goes mad and opens up the cargo bay doors. And that's the real appeal of space, or it is if you ask me, but then I did just say, and not entirely jokingly, that I'd jettison Russell Brand into certain eye-popping death, the idea that something could go wrong. Because if nothing blows up, requires a risky spacewalk, or explodes out of John Hurt's stomach, the whole space experience is just like riding a bus. Looking at places we'll never go, marvelling at the beauty of the world as we realise how small it is, inhaling the moist bio-ridden air and quaffing on water recycled from the driver's piss. Just a thought. Anyway, surely time is the final frontier. I mean, come on, have some imagination.